Welcome to March. A few months ago, I saw a quip on TV that said, change is the only stable thing. That's a nice, and if you ask me, a different way of putting the more common saying, change is the only constant thing in life. As certain as we are about change, you can also be certain that that's what I'll be talking about in the Quip Corner today. See you in a bit. Welcome to the Quip Corner. I smile, sometimes out of amusement or maybe even amazement, when people see change as a bad five-letter word. Can you imagine a world without change? Neither can I. Change, like I said earlier, is the only stable thing in life. It is a constant. It is something we can always be certain about. A world without change will not just be stagnant, it will stink. One thing I have learned about change, as I say in Quip 92 in my first book, is you cannot grow if you refuse to change. You just can't. And yeah, so here you'll see that I'm saying, in this chapter is titled Time for Change. And we have talked about some of the quips in this chapter, but today we're talking about Quip 92. I remember last year when talking about getting comfortable out of your comfort zone. Yes, I'll put the link to that video here. I quoted Max Dupree, who said, "We cannot become what we want to by remaining what we are." Without change, plants will not bloom, so there will be no point even planting anything. We will not grow, quote unquote, older, so it means you won't even have birthdays to celebrate. Now, that will not be any fun. Change is not always pleasant, I agree. In fact, I remember when I was taking my change management practitioner course and we were taught different tools. One of the tools that we were taught was the Sarah curve. Yes, compliments to everybody who's called Sarah, including my mother-in-law, my amazing mother-in-law. But in this context, Sarah stands for shock or surprise, anger, resistance, acceptance, healing, and hope. And let's talk about each of these elements. There are things that happen in our lives where the first reaction is, "What did you just say? I can't believe that." Sometimes the surprise or the shock is not necessarily pleasant. An example that comes to mind is when a person loses their job, as unfortunately a lot of people have, in this COVID period. So it's like, "What did you just say? I don't understand. Were you talking to me?" It's almost as if you're actually falling out of your seat in shock. And then maybe a day later, a week later, as you see from the graph, our response changes over time. At the beginning, it's like, "What just happened?" And then anger sets in. "How could this happen to me?" And as anger sets in, before you know it, some of us, and I know from personal experience, get to that place of resistance or rejection and just say, "No, this cannot be happening to me." Why me? We get into that why me space. And the interesting thing about this first three stages of responses is some of us fluctuate. We get to that part of resistance and rejection, and then We go back to shock and say, no, I need somebody to wake me up from this bad dream. And then you get angry all over again. Then you reject it and you resist and you say, for some of us who are Christians, you start binding and losing and saying, no, I reject this, I reject this. It's human. And then the upward swing. Some of us in a week, a month, for some people it takes years to come to that place of acceptance and say, okay, this is for real. What can I do now with where I'm at? And then as that upward swing continues, you get to that place of healing, of hope, where you're like, wow, I can totally do this, whatever this new thing is. Going through the Sarah change curve takes growth. It takes recognition of change. It takes acceptance of change. It takes a recognition that changing is your opportunity to be a better version of yourself. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm just saying it is possible. Change is our pathway to growth. You cannot grow if you refuse to change. Despite your best intentions to grow, if you refuse to change, if you refuse to take action, nothing is going to happen. Like they say, nothing changes if nothing changes. Or better put, if you ask me, nothing changes until something changes. As I was thinking about this video, I remembered the book, Who Moved My Cheese? It's a great book to read. I'd recommend that to you. I'd also recommend Our Iceberg is Melting. Those are two really good change management books. Change is not optional. Where we have an option actually is choosing to grow. And it's only when you not necessarily expect change, but maybe expect change, accept it, and embrace it. Then you can grow. When you look at the Sarah curve, what do you see? Yes, that's me wearing my coach hat. What do you see? Look again. Two peaks and a valley. Ask any mountain climber. Obviously not me, because I don't climb mountains, but I understand the concept. Ask any mountain climber. The only way you can get to your next peak is by going through a valley. And I believe that your attitude in the valley determines if, when, and how you get to that next altitude. As I said earlier in this video, change is not optional. Growth is. And I recognize that the resistance to change, the anger, the shock comes for a number of us when we lose our job. And I know that a number of people have lost their jobs in, pre and, during this COVID time. And my heart goes out to you. So I'd like to offer you a free 30-minute call if you're struggling with the change that's coming your way. Because when things like this happen, things that are seemingly negative, we need to remember that there's always a silver lining. But it's sometimes difficult to see it. Having been there, having lost a job or two or more, I can imagine what you're going through. So please reach out to me. I'll put my contact details so you can reach out to me. I look forward to hearing your story. Remember, rejection can sometimes be a redirection to your next peak. It just depends on your attitude. Until next week, I look forward to hearing from you, reading your comments, and do take care of yourself. Keep growing. Bye now.